Hi, so yes, you read the title correctly. I quit my job, and most daunting, I quit my career in healthcare. I guess I'm part of this new movement called the Great Resignation because I resigned from my job August 2021. My name is Mami Abrefi, and welcome to my new YouTube channel. I did what I thought would get me to the next level in my career. I went to grad school, I did a concentration in healthcare administration, and my end all was to be a director of a department or even a hospital because this is all I've known. This is what I've known for over 17 years. After undergrad, I got a job, a really great job at a New York-based hospital. Because of some life circumstances, I was only there for 8 months and I had to take some time off. But after that got settled, I then got a job at this current job, or not current, but the job that I did resign from. I was there for about 11 years, and this is where I knew I would retire. Their benefits are great. I was moving up from the time that I had initially started working there. So I was on a trajectory to maybe become a director of a department or even become a director of another hospital later on in life. But that's where my thoughts were. And I knew that this was what I was going to work towards. So the fact that I pulled myself away from that was it was scary. And I know people talk about doing things and it was the hardest thing in my life, but for me it really was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made because I function in stability. I function in a Monday through Friday 9 to 5. Although I never worked 9 to 5, I would go in sometimes at 8 and leave sometimes at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. just to get things done. But I always knew where my paycheck was coming from bi-weekly, and I never had that. I was always so afraid of that entrepreneurial spirit that a lot of people talk about right now, which I will talk about later in another video as to what I'm doing now. But it's just really scary not knowing that you don't have a stable paycheck every other week. So for me to pull that away and just say enough, this is not satisfying, I'm miserable, I'm depressed at times. I was really on the edge and I really had to take a step back for my wellness and my mental being. So the last position I resigned from was in a leadership/management role. I think when I took on this role, that's when I became miserable and depressed. There are some people who can be in management, like my brother. He works well in a management role. For me, it's not the case, and I did 4 years of management to realize that management was not for me. I think that as a staff member, because I did start out as staff and then I grew into a leadership role, I was always just juggling, thinking like a staff member because yes, we're short-staffed, yes, I'm working hard, I'm doing overtime, but I feel like I'm not being appreciated. I feel like no one is really seeing my hard work, to then being in the role where of a leadership role where my boss is telling me that, no, this has to be done. It doesn't matter if we're understaffed, the work still needs to be done. And no, we don't have the budget to get more staffing. And you have to do this and you have to hold people accountable for this and you have to write people up. And sometimes you have to fire people. And that was really, I just could not bring those two worlds together because it just wasn't for me. So when I went into this leadership role, I think that's where I knew that I could not do it anymore. But in hindsight, I'm really thankful that I went through that because it gave me the strength to actually pursue what I'm doing now. When I went for the interview for the current job that I worked at, or that I just resigned from, I was sold a dream. I mean, my first week, I was so excited. There was free coffee. I had my own cushiony office. I never had an office before. And we had free lunches certain days of the week. I went home and I would just brag about my new job. And slowly as the months passed, I realized that that dream wasn't what I thought it was gonna be. And I'm not gonna go into specifics of what happened there. Right now, I'm really thankful that I went through that, because it's not until you're in such a bad place mentally and then it's affecting you physically, because in that year, I gained 20 pounds. And I was just eating my frustrations and my depression away. And when you're in this kind of environment, you can't even think differently. I would sit at my desk and just eat. I'd come home and just eat. On the weekends, I would lay in bed because I was just very, very miserable. But I thank God for putting me in a situation like that where I was so uncomfortable, to give me the strength to do something that I really love doing. And I would have never had the courage to do so if I was comfortable. I'm going to tell you a story of what should have been my first red flag, why this place was not for me. I would say a month into me working in this position, I got an anonymous phone call from I don't know who, but that person told me that I was going to be fired. And because of that, I tiptoed for the entire time that I worked in this department. I did not speak up about anything. I did everything that I was told. Even any ideas that I would have to change things or do things differently, it was suppressed because I lived in a box. Like, I was just like, okay, I can't look left, I can't look right, I can't look up, I can't look down. I can just only look straight and do as I'm told, because I do not want to get fired. And my creativity was very silenced. I could not do anything. If somebody wanted something and I thought it should be done this way, I was like, okay, can't do it that way. It needs to be done this way because I don't want to be fired. I don't want to be fired. And when you're in that kind of environment, it's stifling. You're just always scared. I'd come home, I'd cry, I'd drive home from work, I would just be in tears all the time, just crying, miserable. I'm like, I knew I needed to get out of this space, but I didn't know how, because I was just like, all right, fine. If I pass my 1 year mark, then I can leave this place. I can leave this place and I don't have to get fired. I could just make different moves. But even still, that 1 year was torture for me. So I'll just fast forward to the end of my first year, where I got my performance eval. So the scale for performance eval is from 1 to 5. 1 is just like, you need to go. Number 2 is you need improvement. Number 3, you meet expectation. 4, you exceed expectation. And 5, you're a mentor. You're just, you're an example of what an employee should be. For about 8 years, I've always received a 4. And I've always gotten good feedback, positive feedback. Everyone has something to work on, and that would be noted, but it was always on the positive. This was the first time that I got a 3, which says I meet expectations. And for me, that was, when I heard that I got a 3, I cried. I didn't know what to do with a 3. A 3? I'm coming into work early. I'm staying late. I felt like I was busting my behind, and it wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't being received. I guess I saw myself in a certain light, but the person who was evaluating me saw me in another light. And this broke me. I got my evaluation on a Friday. The entire weekend, I stayed in bed. I cried. I cried to my mom. I cried to anybody who would listen. And I'm even getting really emotional thinking about that now, because I really worked my butt off and I thought that I had done everything correctly, but in the eyes of the person who was evaluating me, it wasn't enough. And even though I felt like I was giving my all, I came short in their eyes. So this was the moment where I was like, if I'm going to work myself to the ground, I might as well do it for myself or for a family member, for something that I can see the progress, and I know that my hard work is going to get myself or my family ahead. Because doing it for a corporation or for an institution is not getting me anywhere. I'm still getting my same paycheck. If somebody says I'm not doing the best that they think I should do, then I don't get bonuses, I don't get raises. So I'm capped depending on somebody's opinion of me. or how somebody feels about the work that I've done. So I need to make some changes in my life. So that was the end of December 2020. January 2021, I fasted. I did what's known as a Daniel fast. Every year, my family, and myself included, we fast to kind of get closer to God and try to get a vision or guidance as to the next year. And I'll say that this was the time where I took this fast very seriously. I've done these fasts in the past. Sometimes I've broken down, I've had a burger in between, but this 21 days of fast, I felt like my life depended on it. Something needed to change because, like I said before, I was on the edge. I was on the edge. I prayed, I cried to God, I read my Bible, and I spent that time really asking God what I should do because, like I said, something had to change. And at the end of that fast, I decided that I was going to resign from this job. I was going to resign. It didn't matter that I had been at this job for 10 years. I want to say that after I got the evaluation, the 3, and also after the fast, I felt free. Because at this point now, as hard as I felt like I was working and how it was being perceived, now it doesn't matter. I can come here and I can say what I want to say because you're going to think what you're going to think anyway. And it was the most freeing thing ever. When you decide you're going to leave a place and you don't care what happens, I can't explain how that feeling feels. It just was liberating. I can't explain it, but if you ever experience it, you'll know what I'm talking about. I had made the decision on a Friday to resign. So I spoken to my mom about it. I think at that time she felt like I was quitting, but I had already made it and I was gonna go. So it was the end of the day. It was around like 4 o'clock, and on a Fridays I tried to leave around 5 o'clock. So I texted my mom. I was like, okay, Mom, I'm about to do it. She was like, okay, call me after. I went into my boss's office and I was like, oh, I need to talk to you about something. And I spoke about like what I really want to do in life, and I want to take this time to kind of pursue my interests that are outside of healthcare. And to my surprise, my boss was very understanding. Once I did that, the weight, it's like I feel it again right now. Like as I'm talking through it, first I've been having knots in my stomach, and now I just feel like the weight lifted off. I decided to also move because I wanted a change. I wanted an environment. Like I wanted everything just to change. I wanted my own place and, just to pursue what I wanted to pursue in another state, just far from my job and my life in New York. So I decided to also move, but that's another story for another day. During the time when I resigned, my job was very understanding. Like at the end, they were very understanding about the change. I mean, I ended up working for a few months from Georgia, in a remote position when I was doing school. But to fast forward from all that, it just didn't work out with the career and the school that I'm doing now. So eventually I just had to give my final resignation and just be like, I'm done and I want to pursue this. I will not say this was remember I said again, it was like one of the hardest things, because there are some times where I'll lay in bed and just be like, what am I doing? I have worked for so long. I've always had to be somewhere and had to report to somebody or have to get this done, and I'm not doing any of that. And I kind of don't feel like I'm contributing to society. And no offense to anybody who's not working or anything like that, but just for me and for what I've done in my life, sometimes I feel like, what am I doing? And it's hard because I'm not working right now. I'm pretty much living off of my savings, and I know one day that's gonna run out, but I want to say that I'm happy, and that's something that I could not say years ago or even like some months ago. But I'm taking it day by day, and I am doing something that I really love and that I'm very passionate about. That's it for me right now. Thank you for watching this video. I know that everyone's time is so limited now, so I appreciate and I value the time that you have spent with me listening to my story, and hopefully there's more to come, because I definitely want to do other videos in the future. And also my next video will just be talking about the industry that I'm pursuing now and the day-to-day and how I am adjusting from being in healthcare to this new industry. Okay, bye.